How many stories do you have? Have you ever thought how many others have similar stories to you? Welcome to Merging Lanes Podcast, a fan-based podcast where I take your story and find others similar online. If you have a story that you'd like to submit, email it to jukeboxginger88@gmail.com. Welcome to another episode of Merging Lanes. I'm your host, Jukebox Ginger. Our fan-submitted story today is about a college experience that they had. It's pretty crazy. And even more to add to it, they will be telling the story themselves. With that being said, I did find 3 other stories for you today, one being pretty short, related to just some pretty crazy college experiences. So that's what you guys can expect for today's episode. This first story is called Caved In by Dat Triga is the username for Reddit. Again, like I said, I always like to give credit where it's due. We had been drinking at my house for a while prior to going out to the bars. By the time we started bar hopping, all of us were fairly hydrated and probably making a scene everywhere we went. We decided to stop in the smaller bar that nobody really liked, but I insisted because it had the really badass painting of Beethoven on the far wall, so you would see him as soon as you walked in the front door. So we go inside and order some drinks. This bar had a pretty small dance floor. We congregated there and we're basically just trying to make each other laugh, talk shit, and hit on girls. As the night wore on, I had to use the bathroom. I had never used the bathroom in this establishment, but had always noticed people going in and out of a set of those swinging western doors. These were inside and led to what I thought was going to be a hallway for the restrooms. So I go over there, push open the doors, and there's a staircase leading down. I go down the stairs, again, assuming they lead to a bathroom. When I get down there, no facilities are available. It is just a smallish basement with some boxes and various bar necessities stacked up on shelves. Their walk-in cooler was also down there, along with a wooden door in the foundation. I open the door, but there's literally just a big mound of dirt. It was like the door led through the actual basement wall of the establishment to about a 6-foot high opening under whatever business was next door. Other than the dirt, there's nothing but rafters and a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. So I pissed in the dirt, close the door, then go in the walk-in. It was unlocked. So I grabbed like 4 beers, one for each of us, and head back upstairs. Nobody noticed when I came out of the western doors carrying beers, so I distribute them among my pals and say I bought them at the bar. Nobody said anything about having to take the caps off themselves. This process repeats a few times. I go down, steal some beer, and return. I did not tell anybody because I did not want anybody else going down there and drawing attention or telling on me or whatever. After an hour and a half or so, I start thinking about the weird cave I discovered and about how I have always wanted to use a fire extinguisher. So I go back down there, open the weird door, and grab the fire extinguisher. I pull the pin and just start unloading it all over this weird room. Then I start spraying it from the storage room, not the walk-in cooler, and literally just screaming, fuck yeah, and imagining I'm in a movie or something and an alien or a fire is on the other side of the door. I put it back on its mount, go back in the walk-in, but this time I loaded up my pockets with beers before grabbing 4 in each hand, heading back upstairs. I'm convinced that I am about to get busted for sure, but still, nobody noticed. I give everybody some beers and keep 3 or 4 to myself. When I had 2 left, somebody bumped me and I dropped them, shattering both on the dance floor. I just did the drunken stare at the mass of glass and foam and look up. There was this girl with a really nice ass I had been kind of talking to and trying to dance with all night. She saw the whole thing and comes up to me saying, "Are you just drunk as fuck right now?" The way she said it was kind of seductive. I do not know how to describe it, but this was her in to talk to me. I could feel all of my friends staring at me, waiting to see how I'm going to handle this, because I kept talking about her all night. I look over at my buddy, wink, look back at her and say, "I'm not drunk as fuck, I'm gay as fuck." I'm not sure why I said that. As she's about to respond, a bouncer or somebody who works there comes up to me and says, "You have to leave for breaking those beers. I let you stay for a while because you've been spending so much money," or or so he thought, but you have been out of control all night, and that is the final straw. He probably said this because what I thought were good and cool dance moves were most likely the exact opposite. As he is pushing me outside by the back of my neck, the girl grabs my hand, and I kind of like yank her with me as this guy's pushing me. We go outside, lock eyes, and I planted one on her. My buddies came out shortly after once they had closed their tabs. I start telling the group the whole story about where I was getting the beers and the fire extinguisher. Nobody believed me, even though some of the fire extinguisher stuff was still on my shoes. I kept pointing to the powder and saying, "What the hell is this powder if not from a fire extinguisher? How do you think I was getting so many beers with the cap still on?" But everybody thought I was lying. Then the same guy who kicked me out comes outside and yells, "Was somebody downstairs in the cooler and messing with the fire extinguisher? Who was it?" We all look at each other and do the Looney Tunes, complete with sound effects, sprint away where our feet are just spinning in circles. He barreled after us, but we got away. I never saw the girl again, as she did not run when I did. So, girl, if you're out there, holla at you, boy. And that was the time I got to use a fire extinguisher. That's a pretty interesting college experience. It's sad to say that that sounds pretty normal for a college experience. I lived in a college town for several years. I didn't go to college there, but I was in the age range of all of the college kids. I went to bars all the time, and there was always these hole in the walls with their own stories behind them, and so this experience doesn't sound too far-fetched to me at all. All right, next up. This one is extremely short, but I picked it because it's pretty messed up and a little disturbing. But that's why we have 3 in this episode, because 3 that I have before the fan-submitted story. This one's called Oh Brother, submitted by Hot Bukaki. I went to a house party. There was a girl who was having sex with a whole bunch of dudes wearing a masquerade mask. Me and a few friends were outside chilling on the patio when we saw the girl running out crying. Me and a couple buddies ran in to see what the fuck happened, because even though she was having a good time with some of the guys at the party, she should not be treated like shit. We found out one of the guys who was having sex with her was her own brother. Apparently the brother was fucking his own sister, and he went to remove her mask. When he did, well, shit got real weird. The party was killed after that, and everyone went home. I guess the story isn't so much crazy, but more fucked up. Yeah, yes, I would agree with you on that. As disgusting and disturbing as this story is, I would like to suggest that people who are going to have a good time in their college years be a little more safe. Maybe know who you're sleeping with. There's a lot of diseases out there. We all know this. It's not news. So, it's definitely messed up. The whole situation's pretty disgusting. So, at least to me, so I don't really have sympathy for the situation for either one of them. But I wanted to read it because it's just, I don't know. I feel like everybody's going to have their own opinion on this story. And actually, anybody watching this, please feel free to leave comments, reach out to me, and give me feedback. Even if it's a negative, I don't care. I'd love to hear from you guys. All right. We have one more story before we get into the fan-submitted one this evening. This one is called Peaceful Pumpkin by Oh My Testes, also a Reddit post. So I was a 17-year-old freshman in college, and I went out for the night dressed up as a pumpkin. My puberty-addled brain thought it was a good idea to chug a solo cup full of rubbing alcohol shitty vodka. Yeah, I've been there. At some point, I used more of the shitty vodka to spike some even shittier boxed wine. Apparently, I made it back to my dorm, hung out with some people, and went to use the one-person guest bathroom, the only bathroom that locks from the inside. Some kids called EMS because I didn't come out after 30 minutes. I was totally unresponsive. Some guy was drunkenly attempting to stab the door open with a knife. And the RA drunkest of all, was futilely attempting to kick through the window over and over again. Anyway, half a dozen police show up and ram the door off its hinges, only to find me cuddled up on the toilet in a ridiculous pumpkin outfit. EMS had me on my feet with some smelling salts, and I was essentially fine. But they had to take me into the hospital since I was technically still a minor, so I hopped into the ambulance, made friends with the doctors and nurses, and had a merry old time. I had a really friendly cop take me home the next morning, and I got to skip out on the hangover. I got in quite a bit of trouble with the school, and since I don't remember anything, the dean of student conduct wanted to guilt some remorse into me by reading the police report to me aloud. The report was short and sweet. Subject was friendly and made lots of jokes. That sounds like me. The days that I remember in my college years, at least, were a lot of getting drunk, but I've always been a nice drunk back in my college years. I'd get just sloppy drunk, super happy, giggly, and tired eventually, and then just pass out. There's so many different versions of people getting drunk, and this story is very mellow of the stories, and it's definitely a very common college experience, so I definitely wanted to share that. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Shank from the Shank Redemption Podcast. He is our fan-submitted story for the evening, and this will be the first episode where the fan is the one telling their own story.
Hey guys, this is Shank from the Shank Redemption Podcast and from Blurred Line Podcast on JG's Lounge. And I'm here today to read from my awesome, remarkable tablet. They're not giving me any money. I just fucking love this thing. My story, the Nude Olympics. Back during the winter, the 1990s, I was sitting in my fraternity room at Delta Upsilon studying, and it was snowing outside. It was January, and the flakes were as big as goose down feathers, and it was that quiet kind of winter night where the attenuation was such that it was perfectly silent outside, except for the crackling of the ice on the window panes when it started to melt from the heat inside the room. The temperature was 15 degrees. Not a night that you'd want to be outside, or so I thought. That was when the phone rang and the intercom went live. And as it crackled to life, one of my brothers, Nate, poured through the speaker and said, "Nude Olympics, 15 minutes carry quad." Now, before I could utter the words "Nude Olympics?" ? My Chinese roommate, Brian, jumped out of his room, jumped in front of my face, and said, "Dude, you're running with me in the Nude Olympics." And I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Yes, you are. You're my pledge son," which was true. I was only a pledge at the fraternity. I was only a pledge for the fraternity at the time. And I couldn't really say no because I was being allowed to live there as a courtesy because I was driving an hour and some change back and forth every day. And they knew I was going to get in, but I still had to behave myself. And he said, "Yes, you are. You're my pledge son. You're running." And I don't know where I pulled this from, the ether or wherever, but I said, "I'm not running, but I'll drive the getaway car." This seemed to satisfy Brian as he ran back into the room. Now, I didn't know what a nude Olympics was. I knew what nude meant. I knew what Olympics meant, but the combination of the two, I had no clue. I was a country boy from Deer Creek, Indiana, and I didn't have cable growing up. I was very isolated and didn't have a lot of what you would call social acumen. Brian ran back out in a trench coat and boots and nothing else. I didn't know that night that I was going to need bleach for my eyes. I was wrong. He said, let's go. He ran out the door. I knew I was doing something outside, so I got dressed for the best that I could. So, I run downstairs after I got dressed, and all of the fraternity brothers were downstairs and they were in the foyer. And they were all gathered around Brian, and there was a great cacophony. And when I got downstairs, they all stopped and looked at me, and Brian said, I want you to drive down to the carry quad, park, and wait for my signal. And I was like, dude, I don't even know what's going on. Brian said, dude, it's the Nude Olympics. And I said, I'm from Deer Creek. Brian said, oh, okay. So basically, and I'm going to pause right here, at Purdue, the carry quad, it's a residential dorm. And there are 4 L-shaped buildings with entrances at the north, south, east, west points and a massive courtyard in between. And when the Nude Olympics were happening at the university, what would happen is thousands of students would gather in the middle of a gigantic circle, and then people would strip down naked, do 1 lap around the inner circle to people cheering, and jump back in and get dressed real quick so as not to get caught by the authorities. College money going to work. The idea was not to get caught. So he explained that to me. Brian explained the Nude Olympics to me and told me to wait for his signal. And I said, well, what's your signal going to be? He said, you'll know. I said, no, tell me. He goes, oh, you'll know. So Brian and the gaggle of fraternity brothers from Delta Upsilon walked down the hill because the house is on Slater Hill, and they were walking down to the carry quad. Now, I drove down to the carry quad, and all of the parking was gone. All of it. There were hundreds, because this is an all-campus pause. This is an all-campus thing. So when that call goes out, folks, that means that everybody in the campus gets the call. I don't know who's in charge of doing it. I have never figured it out. I don't know if it's the Illuminati. I don't know. But somehow everybody gets the call. We're talking thousands of students somehow get the call. Anyway, but the thing was, it just so happened there was 1 spot left around the carry quad and all the parking lots where Brian could get to me. And it was right, the 1 spot left right next to the stop sign at the intersection on the street behind the carry quad, a street that would leave us access into the night. So, using up every bit of luck that I would be able to have in life for winning the lottery or any other supermarket, sweepstake that I would enter, I got the parking spot and I parked there. And I got out and I walked across the street and I stood on the corner outside of the carry quad waiting for the signal. Now, as I said, it was snowing, big goose down flakes, beautiful outside, picturesque, beatific. And to dress inconspicuously, I had put on black leather pants, a black shirt, black soft leather jacket, and a black ski boarding cap that hung down to my ass. As I said, inconspicuous in the snow. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And then somebody walked outside of the quad and was walking towards me in a big, puffy purple jacket. And as he's getting closer, I see a mustache. And this is a mustache we all recognize, the cop's mustache. This gentleman walked up to me and he said, "Hey, how you doing tonight?" I said, "I'm good." He said, "What are you doing out here tonight?" I said, "No, I'm just chilling." He said, "No, I'm going to ask you again. What are you doing out here tonight?" And then it hit me. oh, this guy's a cop. And so I whipped up a lie faster than I've ever whipped up a lie in my life. And I said, well, sir, my girlfriend just broke up with me. We were together for 2 years, 4 months, 2 weeks, 3 days, and 4 hours. And he goes, oh my God, I am so sorry. Look, my name is Paul. I am a counselor here at the Quads. And he pulls out a card and hands it to me. He says, if you need anything, son, and I mean anything, I will be here for you every step of the way. And in my head, in my heart, I went, I am going every step to hell. And as he's shoving the card in my face and I'm contemplating my trip to hell, I hear the cheers of about 5,000 to 10,000 students inside of the Cary Quad. He turns on his heel and runs back. Card still flipping in the air and hitting snowflakes as it tumbles to the ground. I knew that was a sign, but that wasn't the sign. I waited for a few more minutes and I heard another louder cheer. But yet I knew that was not Brian, because that's not how Brian operated. Brian was 5'5", impossibly in shape. He managed the girls' basketball team, and his life was lived in hyperdrive energy 24/7. So I waited another 5 minutes, and then I heard it. This ground rumbling scream from the quad. The sound was so loud and so prolific that the snowflakes parted above the quad. And I knew that was the sign. I turned to start to run. And as I did, I heard, Shank, start the car. I turned to look back behind me, and a naked Chinese man wearing only boots was running at me. Behind him was a gathering of about 20 to 30 counselors and Purdue police officers. And pouring out like lemmings over a cliff. Behind them, 5 to 10,000 Purdue students. Unless I had seen it in real life, I would not have believed something like this. It would have to have been in a movie to come to life. I start running for the car. Now, here's the thing I didn't tell you about the car when I parked it. I had the idea that for some reason I needed to leave both doors open, not open because of the snow, but just sitting on the latch where we didn't have to go through the extra step of actually pulling the handle open in the door. I don't know why I thought this was a good idea, but I did. I get to my car and I throw open the door. I dove in. I didn't sit down. I dove like you would dive into a pool and shot out the other side with the door not closed onto the street. And I tumbled and landed spread eagle. As I heard people shouting, I jumped back up, dove across my hood, Starsky and Hutch style, sat in the driver's side, and I turned the key. Now, here's the thing you need to know about the TC3 Miser that I was driving at the time. That car never started on the first try. Never. But for some reason, that same amount of luck that I've used up at that time that should have gone to the lottery later in life was around again, and it started on the first try. Now, the reason this is a big deal is if you get caught running the Olympics, and this is another aside here, folks, you get suspended. You lose all your scholarships, never to come back. And there are other crimes that you get charged with. So, I jump in. I start the car. And then a naked Chinese man is sitting next to me. I look over at him and I scream. He looks at me. He screams. We are both screaming. And then all of a sudden, this fist comes down on my windshield. Now, it's a puffy purple coat. And I think, oh, that must be my fraternity brother, Nate, beating down on my windshield to clear the snow because he was wearing a purple puffy coat. And I hear this voice yelling, stop, stop, stop. And I hear Brian yelling, go, go, go. And I notice that the purple puffy arm is actually attached to the counselor who was there to help save my life. Yelling, stop, 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 go, 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 stop, 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 go, go, go. I decided to listen to the naked Chinese man. So I slammed on the gas, and as I'm fishtailing up the street and the snow is blowing off of the massive window in my hatchback, I see cops and counselors slipping and tripping as they're trying to catch us running up the hill, and 5,000 to 10,000 students mixed with our fraternity brothers jumping and cheering and pumping their fists. When we get to the top of Slater Hill, Brian yells, stop. I said, why? He said, stop. I stopped the car, and without a word, he opened the door and ran off into the night in only boots. I decided that I still had the heat on me, much like in Grand Theft Auto GTA. I had white stars, 5 of them flashing above my head. And I turned down the side road that went up to the Tridelt's house. And again, that luck that I was telling you about was there because there was one spot open on the opposite side of the street, and something straight out of a movie, like everything else that night, I cut the wheel as hard as I could, and I spun 180 degrees and landed perfectly in between the 2 cars. I shut down my car, turned off my lights, and not more than 10 seconds later, I saw 3 Purdue police cruisers, zoom, 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 go off down the street, chasing a TC3, the ghost of a TC3 miser. I waited for 30 minutes in that spot, not moving, not breathing. When I finally felt like the heat was off, I started my car up, did not turn on the lights, and I drove back to Delta Upsilon. I parked in the parking lot and walked inside. I walked into the foyer, and there, surrounding Brian Ting in a table in the middle of the foyer, were crumpled dollar bills and pennies and quarters and nickels in a pile. And I walked in and I said, what are you guys doing? They turned and they looked at me and they screamed, Shank! Amazed. Most of them looking like they had seen a ghost. And I said to them, guys, what is going on? And they were like, we thought you got pinched by the cops. And I said to them, well, what is with the money? Are you guys going on a beer run? And they said, no, we are getting your bail money together. Do you know how much bail money they got for me between all of us fraternity brothers? $38.42. That's my story.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the stories today, and I hope you enjoyed Sean's. I know I did. It was very difficult to kind of categorize this episode based off of his story, because I feel like I probably could have dug it deeper to get it more catered to getting naked and running around town. But I thought, just the college experience in general, everybody has stories that either went to college or lived in a college town during that age. And there's just so many out there. There is. I could go on for hours, but I'm not going to do that, obviously. At least not on this episode. I can always save some more for next time. I hope you guys are enjoying Merging Lanes. I know I enjoy it. It's a different perspective of podcasting for me. And I love listening to these kind of podcasts as well. So I just wanted to do one. Now, the idea of Merging Lanes is that, multiple stories merging into one concept.
How many stories do you have? Have you ever thought how many others have similar stories to you? Welcome to Merging Lanes Podcast, a fan-based podcast where I take your story and find others similar online. If you have a story that you'd like to submit, email it to jukeboxginger